Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhanang saranam gacchami, Sanghang saranam gacchami. Paying homage to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha. Laying that container foundation of the acknowledgement of the capability of being awake in this lifetime and the joys of receiving the Dhamma and of having Sangha, each other, and all of those who have gone before us, to pave the way. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And just beginning to settle in our seats. Seeing what's happening with the heart and the mind as we settle. Maybe we're noticing hearing. Hearing and sounds that arrive to the ears. Maybe we're noticing nose and odors that come to the nose. There's the eye and the eye forms. Tongue and taste. The body and the tactile objects where we're touching at the seat, or the hands, how they touch each other. And we have the mind and mental phenomenon. What arrives at the mind door. Understanding that anything that happens comes to us through one of these senses and our perception of what's happening at the senses. And if we want to lay a little foundation of some concentration of gathering ourselves together in one place, we can notice the breath wherever it's most evident. And let our attention focus just on that single object. Noticing coolness or warmth at the nostrils or pressure at the diaphragm. Noticing breathing in and breathing out. Rising and falling. And as we gently and with compassion guide the mind toward concentration, it's sort of like the secret ingredient of meditation. It's like the backbone of the entire effort. One of the simplest and most elementary, concrete, and practical and ancient therapeutic technique in the Buddhist repertoire. It can become a means of temporarily dispelling the repetitive thoughts of the everyday mind, and a way to sort of open the psyche to a new and unscripted experience of being right here in the present moment. It helps keep us centered, training the mind on rising and falling of the breath or returning to a touch point. And it allows us to support the investigation of impermanence. And it's not an end unto itself, concentration, but it helps us understand the benefits of surrender, of letting go. That attention to a single object or even changing objects at the sense doors, whatever arises, we can have mindfulness with. Can help us open up to peaceful states of this kind of meditative concentration. Makes them more likely to arise sometimes. By just keeping our attention for a while on a steady single object like the breath or sound, Just following our breath and seeing what happens. Noticing in and out. Maybe keeping a soft mental label in the background of in and out. And the rest of our awareness on the physical sensation of the breath. And often, even if we're noting, thinking and planning and fantasizing and worrying rushes in. Sometimes noises outside of ourselves will pull us. So we gently persevere. We may notice that there's lapses in our attention, not once or twice, but over and over again. Sometimes we notice right away and sometimes not for a while. But we don't judge ourselves. We've heard it before. People say, it's like taming a wild animal, a difficult endeavor and full of ups and downs, but it can yield to some results with patience and some diligence. And our mind and body can relax a little bit more as thoughts can sometimes diminish, emotional pressures can sometimes weaken, and a kind of calm takes over. The mind can gradually come under some degree of control and settle down. The Buddha compared this process to the smelting of gold. When its superficial contaminants are removed, then the gold becomes light and soft and malleable and bright. Its brilliance comes forth and it begins to shine. And so we use this concentration practice, focusing on the breath or a touch point as our object of attention. Sometimes we have trouble focusing. We can look to see if any of the hindrances are present. Sleepiness and tiredness or restlessness, grasping and clinging, or aversion and pushing away, or sometimes doubt in the practice. Over time, we can accept these, or they fall away as we see them clearly, and the mind becomes a little calmer, and we can shift a little to using the concentration to focus on phenomenon of thoughts and memories and sensations that are arising in the mind, and we can see them and use investigation. Letting mindfulness make us aware of what is, and concentration keeps our attention on it. And we can begin to notice usually what we might be focusing on, once investigated, can be seen as arising and passing away, impermanent, anicca. This mindfulness and alertness, awareness, helps us see clearly what's arising, where we might be clinging, when it might be good to let go of something that seems unskillful. And we can let that attention go back to the breath from time to time, and also see clearly what else is arising in the heart and mind. We may see clearly sometimes when something seems of ill will or harming coming into the mind, ourselves or others. And mindfulness practice, insight, and vipassana can help us clearly distinguish what is arising, if it would be good to let it go, if it's unskillful or not useful. And we can incline the mind also toward kindness and compassion, other states of being. We're using mindfulness and investigating the truth of what is when it arises. We have a certain amount of energy. There can be some joy that gets cultivated. And that calm and concentration can be there, as we also can employ equanimity around what arises and passes. So we can gently incline our mind toward maybe one of those 7 factors of awakening, rather than clinging for too long to something that may be more obvious dukkha of suffering being created by our responses to our perceptions. We might have little windows from time to time with the insight and the understanding of the true nature of things. That all these component things arise and pass away. If we grasp onto them, they're subject to sorrow. And we might also see the empty nature of what we're grasping onto. Always having that breath to return to, or the touch point, as we're just present with what arises in the heart and the mind, noticing the attitude of the mind, holding ourselves in kindness and compassion for whatever arises. beginning again when we feel lost, or the mind is roaming around, or maybe there's some tension in the body that keeps calling us. Just seeing clearly what's happening in this moment. Waking up to the present moment is a moment of awareness, of freedom. We're seeing clearly our situation, that first step on the path to liberation. This clear seeing of the truth as it arises in front of us. Coming with an open mind to see things objectively and to know them as they are. It takes some amount of effort. Can cause some kinds of internal turmoil sometimes. Letting go of some of our emotional screens around us so that we can see and understand things in a way that's not confirmed by our preconceptions. Not so dictated by our desires, but to just see clearly. As we've all seen for ourselves, the Dhamma is the truth that we have to be prepared to look at existence as it is, by seeing rightly. Trying to not see what we want to see and look at things objectively. Rising and falling, coming together, falling apart. seeing clearly the suffering nature of clinging to our perceptions of things sometimes. Noticing craving, that second noble truth. Noticing what happens when we let go. And so we cultivate this path of the Eightfold Path of the right view. Understanding dukkha and the causes of dukkha. This wisdom approach in these two of the Eightfold Path that we've been paying attention to lately. Right intention. And in that wise intention, we can notice what the Buddha gave us as 3 positive thoughts of generosity, renunciation, letting go, and of loving friendliness, holding ourselves dear and nurturing, non-harming. And of compassion for ourselves and others. Holding ourselves dear. Having friendliness for ourselves, even when things are challenging. May we continue creating this space, opening in our heart and mind for cultivating positive thoughts, loving friendliness, metta, as our heart's natural capacity. in whatever way works for you to feel in your heart that kindness, that well-being, that sense of friendliness, not being attached to something personal, a very unconditional kindness. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety. And may I maintain well-being in myself. May we nurture this friendly wish to open our hearts in an easeful way. To ourselves, to a friend, to a teacher or a benefactor, a being from whom we've derived great benefit, holding them dear in our hearts, that they may abide in well-being, be free from harm and ill will, be free from anxiety. Our simple way of helping generate this universal well-being, grounding ourselves in love and finding a response to the chaos that's around us, opening our hearts. With kindness and compassion for others, family members, neighbors, those in directions out and around us, letting these thoughts of goodwill include those to the east, to the south, to the west, and to the north. Neutral beings that we don't know, unseen beings, those in joy and those in sorrow. May all beings everywhere know happiness and the causes of happiness. May this unconditional love and kindness in our hearts spread to those enlightened and those unenlightened. That all beings may know happiness and the causes of happiness. Be free from hostility. Be free from affliction. Be free from ill will. The words from the Reflections on Well-Being as the invitation to let that feeling of friendliness that lies at the heart of all this practice with loving kindness. May all beings everywhere be free from harm. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitava meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. They arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly through mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. And may the goodness of our practice benefit ourselves and all sentient beings. Thank you so much for your practice. It brings great joy